Things like this happens when people act stupid.
This game is hard. I have no idea what to do.
Potential paranormal activity at an abandoned mansion that was said to be haunted. Some of them brought a knife, to defend themselves from ghosts. They got into the house and immediately noticed the bad smell coming from it, but they kept on going anyway.
Welcome back for another night of intellectual stimulation, pivotal career choices, and self-reflection on past mistakes. We're committed to creating a unique and fulfilling work experience. One part of that commitment is ensuring that you don't get tired of the voice that you're hearing right now. Using the keypad below, it seems that you had some trouble with the keypad. I see what you were trying to type, and I will auto-correct it for you. Thank you for choosing Angsty Teen.
And that's when the girl who survived, she couldn't handle what happened that night, so she had a mental breakdown and spent most of her life at a psychiatric hospital.
The picture behind me might look like a normal photo, but it's actually one of the most sinister, real-life haunted photos in history. Taken by a professional photographer in 1972 as guests arrived for a wedding, everything in this picture looks pretty normal. But if you take a closer look at the man standing in black, you'll see something odd. You can actually see somebody in white crouching behind the man. All four of the people in the picture said that there was no one behind them when it was taken. The photographer said the same thing, and that it would be impossible for someone to crouch behind them without him seeing them.
The elevator stopped.
This is a better picture where you can actually see the guy's legs, and then
get out now or
see his eyes.
whatever.
The picture was even examined by police photographers, and they confirmed that it was genuine.
So, funny story. A dead body was found in this vent once. Okay, so not that funny, but it's a story.
She begins searching the downstairs kitchen because she knows that
let's start with your nightly chores.
As she's walking to the kitchen,
check on Ballora and make sure she's on her stage, but
she looks under the table and sees they aren't there, which is kind of odd. She knew they were too scared to go into the basement alone, but she decided to check anyway. They weren't there.
I guess Ballora has better things to do.
The mom then says, "Jordan, Casey, come out now. Mommy's
that should be fun.
There was no answer. Andy really begins to set in. She decides to call 911 and reaches an operator. She tells the operator what's wrong, and the operator sends an officer to her house. Once the officer arrives, he says, "Don't worry, we will find him." As she's sitting in the living room, she hears giggling and laughing and hears a closet door slam upstairs. She sprints upstairs and says, "Jordan, Casey, you worried me sick." She opened the closet door and nobody was there. While all of this is going on, she hears the doorbell ring. She runs downstairs and finds
Let's check on Funtime Foxy. Make sure he's ready for showtime tomorrow.
Then Jordan looks at Mommy and says, "Why were you telling us to stay in the shed?"
This is why you should always watch videos to the end. In 2003, a woman came home to her apartment to see that her door was unlocked. She went inside, nothing was missing, so she
There seems to have been a problem with the voice synthesizer. Default settings have been restored. Please proceed through the vent ahead of you to Circus Baby's auditorium.
The next day, her door was unlocked, so she reviewed the footage. She watches in horror as late in the night, her front door opens and in walks this tall, creepy man who looks around and then walks towards her bedroom off camera. She immediately sprints out of her apartment and calls the police, who show up and tell her to go back in her apartment and just try to stay calm, and that they would put an officer right outside her door.
Circus Baby had a busy day today. Let's check the light and make sure she's in proper working order.
Her apartment on that video. She doesn't know if he actually left. As she's sitting there, she
Oh, Circus Baby, we aren't here to play hide and seek. Let's encourage Baby to come out of hiding with a controlled shot.
This is the story about the blind woman who could see ghosts. So this girl who was blind at birth lived with her father on a single ranch house. So because she was blind
Let's
at birth,
try another controlled shock.
Pretty much she knew how far apart everything was based on what she touched.
There seems to be a power malfunction that is affecting our ability to properly motivate Baby. Please stand by while I reboot the system. I will be offline momentarily during this process. Various other systems may be offline as well, such as security doors, vent locks, and oxygen. Commencing system restart.
Over the course of the next few months, the blind woman started speaking to over 13 ghosts. And each time she would speak, her father would get very, very upset at her for speaking to ghosts. So one day, the blind woman fell in the kitchen and had to call the paramedics. And once the paramedics arrived there, she asked, "Can my dad come with me to the hospital?" The paramedic then replied, "Your dad's been dead for 6 years. Make sure to like for a part 2." You're about to hear one of the most disturbing stories on the internet.
I don't recognize you.
Was a
You are new.
boy who was always frustrated.
I remember this scenario.
However, it's a strange thing to want to do, to come here.
On May 20th,
I'm
1998,
curious what
Springfield,
events
Oregon,
would lead a person to want to spend their nights in a place
when he
like
returned
this.
home after the interrogation,
Willingly.
he pulled a gun
Maybe
out of his collection
curiosity.
and killed both of his
Maybe
parents.
ignorance.
Then he simply ate dinner and just went to
There
bed
is a
like nothing
space
happened.
under the
next
desk.
morning is where
Someone
things get
before
ridiculous.
you
He brought
crafted
his
it into
entire
a
gun
hiding
collection
place,
to his
and it
school
worked
and
for
opened
him.
up fire, shooting
I recommend
27
that you
students.
hurry, though. You will be safe there. Just try not to make eye contact. It will be over soon. They will lose interest.
This is why you should never go sailing, and I mean never. This girl named Tammy and her boyfriend went sailing across the world for about 2 months straight. They brought very little food and water with them, and they sailed right into a storm. Tammy survived, but her boyfriend did not and died in the storm. She got back on her boat and started traveling in the storm, and that whole time she thought her boyfriend was there. She ended up hallucinating for the rest of her trip. She had very little food and water and was surviving off of rations, and she still dreamed about her boyfriend being there, but he really wasn't. She was then saved and picked up by a boat, and her boyfriend was nowhere to be found.
This is why you always say yes to tandoori chicken. In 2012, a high school tutor and her students stayed up so late one night studying that by the time they were done, the buses had stopped running. Without another way home, the student asked if he could stay the night at her place. Reluctantly, she agreed. When they got back to the apartment, she fell asleep on her bed and he fell asleep on a blanket next to her bed on the ground. A few hours later, she wakes up to the boy standing awkwardly in the middle of the room with a very strange look on his face. She asks him, "What's wrong?" He looks at her and says, "I'm really hungry. Let's go get some tandoori chicken." Confused, she says, "It's 2 a.m. Just get a snack in the cupboard." And he grabs her by the arm and he says, "No, we are getting tandoori chicken right now." And he yanks her from the bed. Feeling totally caught off guard by this whole situation, she goes into the hall with the boy, and as soon as the door shuts behind them, she can tell that he is terrified. He looks at her and just says, "I'm not actually hungry. When I woke up, there was someone under your bed." This is why you never go to the well on your own. In 1983, a young boy was camping with his family on Roan Mountain in North Carolina, but his mom asked him to head on down the path and get some water. Well, when the boy didn't return, his mom went to check on him and he was gone. A massive search party was launched to find him, but with temperatures rapidly dropping and finding no trace of him, the family braced for the worst. Then, miraculously, on the 7th day of the search, the boy shows up on the mountaintop in an area they had already searched, healthy and clean. When they asked the boy, "Where have you been?" he said he had been at the well when a tall, faceless man showed up behind him, scooped him up, and brought him to the top of the mountain where he kept him in his cabin all night. After the
When
boy
your
gave a
guide
very detailed
comes
description
back
of
online,
exactly where
he is
the
going to
spot
tell
was,
you that
the
he was
police were eager to go
unsuccessful,
find it and
that you
confront
must
this guy.
restart
But
the
punk
system
superintendent
manually.
just raised his hand and
He will
said,
then
"Guys,
tell
it's
you to
pointless.
crawl
I've worked
through
here 40
Ballora
years.
Gallery
There are no
as
cabins
fast
on
as you
Roan.
can to reach the breaker
This
room.
has to be the worst
If
form
you
of
follow
torture
his
ever.
instructions,
I
you
still
will
can't
die.
believe that this form of torture is
Ballora
real
will
and is
not
this
return to
bad.
her stage
The form
anymore.
of torture I'm talking
She will
about
catch
is
you.
white room torture.
The
It
power
is
will
basically
be
a
restored
prisoner
shortly.
isolated in white
When you
rooms,
crawl
wear
through
white
Ballora
clothing,
Gallery,
white
go
clothes.
slowly.
Now
She
you might be
cannot
thinking,
see
how
you
could this be that
and can
bad?
only listen
White
for
room
your
torture is a
movement.
form of psychological
When you
torture
hear her
concerning
music
complete
become louder,
isolation and
she is
sensory
growing near,
deprivation of the prisoner.
listening for
So
you.
you see nobody else and you
Wait,
hear absolutely
and be
nothing
still.
except for yourself. All you get
Thank you
served
for
to
your
is
patience.
white rice
It seems
and
that the
white
power
bread.
system cannot be
Oh,
restarted
if you go to the bathroom,
automatically.
they'll slip you a
You will
white
need to restart the power system manually.
and then you
Please
slip right
return
back
to the
under when you're
primary
done.
control
This
module.
form of torture is so bad that the prisoner loses his own identity in the process. You cannot remember who you are, and you can't remember any of your family. The result of this torture is the loss of identity and forgetting everything you ever knew. You come out of this room a completely different person.
Motion trigger. Service now revamped.
Dark web videos you were never supposed to see, part 4.
You will now be required to crawl through the Ballora Gallery using the vent to your left to reach the breaker room. It is recommended that you stay low to the ground and reach the other side as fast as possible as to not disturb Ballora. I will deactivate myself momentarily as to not create an auditory disturbance.
So people actually took
Deactivating.
the audio, ran it through something called a spectrogram to see what was happening within the audio. Turns out there's a secret message that said you're already dead. internet. They kept finding hidden audio messages time and time again until one Reddit user found a hidden message in the actual video. That video actually turned out to be a woman who was cut into pieces, but you can't see it with a naked eye. They finally solved this puzzle after months, but nobody knows why this message was sent or even what the purpose was. So without further ado, I'm showing the video now. Enjoy.
This father hears strange noises coming from his attic, so he puts a hidden camera up there and makes a disturbing discovery. In 2017, Jerome was laying in bed with his wife and 10-month-old daughter when he heard strange noises coming from the attic. He thought it might have been a small animal, so he forgot about it and went back to bed. The next day, Jerome went up to his attic to take a look, but there was nothing there. A couple days later, he was woken up again by the strange noises, except this time he saw a light shining through one of the vents. He immediately pulled the vent cover off to take a look, but again, he just couldn't find anything. The next morning, he asked his neighbor if he was in the attic last night, but the neighbor said no. So the next day, Jerome installed a hidden camera inside the attic to see what was going on. That same night, Jerome didn't wake up to any noises or light and didn't expect
You will
anything
now be
be on the
required to
camera.
crawl
But
through
when
the
he checked
below.
the camera footage, he was horrified with what he saw. Part 2 is on an inclusive platform called Byte. Press the link in my bio if you want to find out what he discovered.
One of the most terrifying places in the world is a little shack in Louisiana called the Devil's Toy Box, where people go to lose their minds. The shack itself is an attraction from an old Halloween event that was left behind. And from the outside, it doesn't look like anything special, but no one's ever been able to last more than 5 minutes